Well, time now for our Entre Nous slot. And Giselle Bellico has become a household name since the world learned of the unimaginable ordeal she suffered. As the trial of many of the perpetrators unfolded on our screens, we learned how over more than a decade, her then husband drugged her and invited hundreds of men to rape her while he filmed their crimes. For many women, Giselle Pellico has become a hero for choosing to waive her anonymity so that her story might serve to help other women. Well, what many of us might be shocked to discover is that there are still many websites where men exchange tips and ideas on how to drug women so that they can rape them in their sleep too. And that's the subject of a new documentary made by CNN's Saskia Van Doorn, who we are very pleased to welcome here on Paris Direct. Hello, Saskia. Thank you so much for coming to join us. I've watched the documentary. It's astonishing. Perhaps for our viewers who might not have seen it yet, can you give us an idea of how you managed to find out about this world? You went undercover and joined some of these websites.
Well, you mentioned the Giselle Pellico mass rape trial, and we know that the website that Dominic Pellico used to recruit all those men was called Coco. And we were very interested to know, were there other websites out there that were like Coco, where men were meeting and this type of behavior was happening? So we began going undercover. We went onto several websites, but there was one site in particular, this porn site called Motherless, which is very popular. It has about 80 million visits a month on average. And when we went on it, we realized that actually drug-facilitated sexual assault, or chemical submission as it's called here, is far more widespread than people imagine, because on a very dark corner of this porn site, users were uploading tens of thousands of videos labeled as sleep content. These are videos where you see women who appear to be completely unconscious and men are sexually abusing them. And on Motherless, we realized that it was also acting as a gateway, because a lot of the users had Telegram links on their profiles. So you would then be able to access a Telegram group. We were on one which had 1,000 members. And there we saw in real time men from around the world exchanging tips on how to drug and rape their partners and how to get away with it.
As I say, I watched the documentary, and at the end of it, we see you, or we find that you are in the same room as one of these men who is attempting to go ahead with drugging and raping his wife. What did that feel like? And I don't know if you're able to say, what happened to that man afterwards.
Yes, so his name was Piotr, so that's the name we gave him, not his real name. And I exchanged with him for several months. He had told me that he had drugged and raped his wife, that he had run out of medication, but he was hoping to do it again soon. And we realized that as part of the investigation, something that was incredibly important was to show that that there are real men behind these usernames, that they're not just pseudonyms. And that's why we went to Poland. We found out that he was going to be in a specific restaurant. And when we were inside, he walked in, and straight away we were able to see that he was indeed who he said he was. He had, of course, no idea that I was the person who was undercover, who he had been speaking with for all these months. And it was a very difficult moment, because we had, of course, discussed with our editorial team whether or not to confront him there and then, but we were worried about his wife, the safety of his wife. We didn't know what he might do to her. So instead, we passed our findings on to the Polish police, who acted incredibly quickly. They arrested him, and he has since admitted to the charges brought against him.
So that's real action, a real event stopped. But you say that when the websites, that's just one instance, but with the websites where all these men are chatting about what they plan to do, sometimes they're banned, they're dissolved, a new one springs up with a different name. What can be done to stop it?
I think it's a really good point you raised, Angela, because when you look at Motherless, after our investigation was published, it was taken down, but a week later it resurfaced. And it's true that a lot of those videos that we had seen have now been removed. Search terms have been banned. You can no longer look for terms like chloro girl or passed out. However, there is still some content on there. It's just labeled in other languages. So that is the difficulty. It's a bit of a whack-a-mole that one website gets taken down and another reappears, and it makes it very hard for authorities to go after these types of platforms.
You focus in the documentary on a few women in particular, and one of them says, she kind of seems to be warning everybody, you cannot trust anyone, even in your own home, even in your own bed. It's very disturbing. How do these women go on to rebuild their lives?
It is incredibly hard because Zoe Watts, she's one of the survivors we spoke to in the UK. She was married to her husband for 16 years. They have 4 children together. And she describes how one day he came home and he suddenly confessed to her, said that he had been crushing their son's sleep medication into her last cup of tea at night. And then he had been raping her and taking pictures of her. And what Zoe says is, from one day to the next, the man who she trusted the most, the man who she loved, who she had built a life with, suddenly became her aggressor, a man who had committed a crime against her. And it was very difficult for her to accept this, but to also then press charges against him, because the emotional context means that the children would lose their father, that they would know what their father had done to their mother, that they would grow up with a reputation. And that makes it difficult for women to go to the police and then to be able to rebuild after that, because you also have a certain kind of disassociation, as Zoe describes it. She can't remember much of the abuse because, of course, she was sedated. So she felt disassociated from her body. And she's now 8 years, on from this being done to her. And she still says that, her body, that the scars remain. It has taken a long time for her to be able to trust her body and to be able to feel as if she is whole again.
Thank you so much. Saskia Van Doorn, CNN documentary on that subject. Very well worth watching. Don't forget to watch more and to hear more from our guests on Entre Nous. You can check out our website, france24.com.